Ladies and gents, home studio X, and this is how geography is pushing India and Pakistan to war by channel Real Life Lore. Yeah, Real Life Lore made a video about India and Pakistan finally. It's been a while since I did a Real Life Lore video because they're usually too long. Now it's 1 hour long. Like, yeah, okay. They started as like 10-15 minute video, then like 25-30, like, yeah, that's decent. Then 40 minutes, like, okay. 45, now it's 1 hour long. Like, I don't know where this is gonna go, right? Sometimes real life lore video feels like this could have been shorter type of thing, right? Because sometimes it repeats the same topic, but I guess attention span of a lot of people at certain topics are really short, so he has to say things twice. I don't know, but yeah, this is going to be interesting, I guess. Real life lore is a great channel. Obviously, I've been watching that for multi years now. So yeah, again, geography is pushing India. If you're talking about the current conflict, it was not about Kashmir. I don't know why West is constantly pushing this idea. This was about Kashmir. It was about terrorism, not Kashmir. I know people will argue like, but yeah, it's because of Kashmir there's terrorism. Okay, even if Pakistan had all of the Kashmir, you think Pakistan still wouldn't send this terrorists inside India to do terror shit? They try to do religious war. Are you Muslim? Are you Hindu? That was the shit. It was not about Kashmir. So stop putting Kashmir, like Western news has been keep saying like Kashmir-led war. It's not about Kashmir. It's about terror war. It's all about terrorists, right? There's a reason why in entire country is like unanimous, right? There are 200 million Muslims in India, 280 or something in Pakistan. There are 200 million in India. India is a major Muslim country, right? And their leader was also like, yeah, we condemn this and we're with our armed forces. We are patriotic. So this was not about like Hindu, Islam, or like, is it about Kashmir or whatever. This was about terrorism. Terrorism is rising, has been rising for multiple years. This is the same terror cell that attacked Mumbai 15 or so years ago. And this was a boiling point. That's what this was. And it was about Pakistan funding them, which there are strong proof about that. They gave them like a proper national funeral to these terrorists with flag and everything. Pakistan recently gave them $500,000 to these people, point blank, openly. They don't even care. They don't care if people world openly realize, yeah, Pakistan is backing them. They don't care. This is the world we live in now. It's not about Kashmir, right? Kashmir is its own issue, right? Kashmir has been an issue for a long time. This was about terror attacks, not Kashmir. So let's watch this one. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. I like watching, like geopolitics in generally. Things happening around the world is really interesting to keep up to date because it's really surprising how one can be in a bubble. YouTube is one of those platforms where like you can consume all type of media and like make up your mind from there. And you can see biases in news in general. It really surprises me. Like I'm talking about Indian media right now because yeah, Indian media also has a way too much bias, right? Like when I see it, like I tell people when they're saying like, oh, this shit is ridiculous, don't listen to them. There is some truth behind it, but it's much more exaggerated. And that happening everywhere. So YouTube is one of those things like if you consume right media, you would know. So channels like Real Life Lore is really awesome. Like, he gives, I'm pretty sure he gives like links of where his information is coming from. And he usually try to make a proper video. That's why it's hour long. So let's watch it.
On the 22nd of April 2025, a major terrorist attack took place near the town of Pahalgam in the Indian-administered territory of Jammu and Kashmir. A group of armed attackers emerged from the woods surrounding a meadow and ambushed civilian tourists who were visiting the area, separated the men, and then asked them for their religious identity before shooting them if they were not Muslims. 26 visiting tourists were killed in the massacre, all of whom were civilians and nearly all of whom were Hindus, representing the deadliest.
This is the most ridiculous shit I've ever seen. Like people are saying, oh, people don't want to take sides, so they are not talking about this. Okay, you can't just suddenly choose at a certain point, like we don't want to take side here. All of the times, yeah, we're going to take sides. It's obvious this time. The one side literally came and did a religious war, basically. Like, are you Muslim? You're not, so I'm going to shoot you. This is one of the clearest black and white case there can be. This is one of those things where you can condemn people, but no, you don't want to do that. But when it's more gray, like you're going to give your input then. All the wars in the past, yeah, world had input, like West had input. Yeah, great, we're going to insert ourselves here. Not this time, I guess. This time, oh, both sides. What do you mean both sides? Point blank, they ask, like, are you Hindu, are you Muslim? If you're not Muslim, you're going to get shot. Like, this is the most clear terrorist thing that you can condemn, but you're not going to do that.
terrorist attack on civilians in Jammu and Kashmir in more than 30 years, and the deadliest attack on civilians anywhere in India since 2008. And immediately afterwards, the attack sparked a major diplomatic crisis between the governments of India and neighboring Pakistan, after India accused the Pakistani government of having supported and enabled the attack, and vowed that it would retaliate against Pakistan. In the days and weeks that have followed, India and Pakistan have both revoked visas for each other's citizens, closed their airspaces to each other's airlines, sealed their border, urged each other's citizens to immediately leave the other country, while gunfire exchanges along their disputed borders between their armies have been an almost daily occurrence. India has even threatened to shut down the majority of Pakistan's water supply through the Indus River system over the crisis, which Pakistan has warned will be taken as an act of war. The risk of a massive war erupting between India and Pakistan has nearly always been present for decades, but it appears to
Look at the bikes. What is this, 90s?
have increased in chances dramatically over just the past few weeks. A previously relatively unknown militant group known only as the Resistance Front initially claimed responsibility for the massacre at Pahalgam, a group that is generally believed to be an offshoot of the more well-known Lashkar-e-Taiba, a Salafi jihadist organization based next door in Pakistan that is widely designated as a terrorist organization by the UN, the US, and India. Lashkar-e-Taiba's primary objective ever since its founding in the late 1980s has been to force the merger of the whole of Kashmir with Pakistan through violence. And their alleged offshoot, the Resistance Front, claimed that they committed this most recent attack due to the Indian government's recent policies of allowing non-local Hindus to settle and work in Kashmir, a hotly disputed territory between the frontiers of India, Pakistan, and China that is probably the most dangerous disputed territory in the world today, precisely because events like this attack could lead to a war between India and Pakistan, who are both armed with more than 150 nuclear warheads each. An attack in Kashmir, like what happened at Pahalgam, could escalate into a diplomatic crisis that could then escalate into a war.
See, this is the type of shit that really pisses me off. People have balls to say in India, like there is like oh, Muslims are getting suppressed. There are 200 million living here, right? They're not being suppressed. And at the same time, the opposite side, oh, Hindus can't live here. Same shit in Israel, right? Like, oh, there can't be no Israel. Like, we're not gonna, like, that's what Hamas's stance is. And like people are actually going to argue like your both sides are evil. In which universe? 200 million. Do you understand the number? 200 million Muslims live in India. 200 millions cannot be suppressed and people don't know about it. It's a democracy. This is not China where news is going to get suppressed, where Google and YouTube is banned. Everything's open. All the type of shit people post in Instagram and YouTube all the time. If that shit was happening, it would be constantly on news. 200 million Muslims are not being suppressed here, right? Yet the other side is going to be like, yeah, okay, Hindus cannot, come here, Kashmir, and doing all this religious war. And people have balls to actually blame India. Are you fucking kidding me? India is the only border that, is a hard border against terrorism. No terrorist cell can cross into India. But beyond that, entire Middle East is riddled with terrorist cells all over the place.
That could eventually then escalate into a nuclear exchange between them that kills tens of millions of people, and that throws the rest of the world into an apocalyptic nuclear winter. And as of this video's production, the two countries already appear to be closer to the edge of all-out war than they have been in decades. On the 7th of May, India and
comments like this has all been an incredibly fast-moving conflict because obviously it takes time to make this video, and by the time it was finished, ceasefire already announced, and RealLifeLore was like, what the fuck? Yeah, okay, I don't know how to keep up with that shit.
Initiated a military operation in Pakistan that they codenamed Operation Sindoor, wherein they launched airstrikes across 9 locations in both Pakistan-administered Kashmir and Pakistan proper, that they sent at targeted terrorist training camps that were responsible for the massacre of civilian tourists in Pahalgam. The operation marked the deepest airstrikes into Pakistan that India had launched in decades since the 1971 war, and quickly led to a renewal of aerial dogfights, drone attacks, open artillery fire, and heavy gun battles across their disputed border in Kashmir that is.
Yeah, you see in that video, there were a lot of Nepalis. Did you see that? Yeah, these are, what Gurkhas, right? The team of Gurkhas. I did the video on patriotism, basically implying how badass Gurkhas are. Like one Gurkha against multiple wills that's like fucking devastating. One Gurkha is what is it, like a Kurd, that kukri, what is it called? That's it. Right? 10 people would run away basically.
This led to the deaths of dozens of additional people within only a matter of days. The overall border between India and Pakistan is often regarded as the second most heavily militarized border in the world today, only after the border between North and South Korea. And it is so heavily militarized and covered by hundreds of thousands of floodlights that it is one of the few international borders that can be clearly viewed from space. And in order to understand why this border is so militarized today, why Kashmir is such a dangerous and hotly disputed area between their armies that experiences frequent terror attacks, and why India and Pakistan are such arch nemesis today, you need to understand how modern India, Pakistan, and Kashmir all came to be in the first place. And for a lot of that, as with most other major modern controversial border disputes, you can thank the British.
There you go.
For nearly 200 years from 1757, the British dominated much of India through indirect and later direct colonial rule. But by the time of the mid-1940s, after Britain became exhausted and financially depleted by the fighting of the Second World War, it became clear to Britain that it could no longer afford to continue hanging on to the whole of India as a colonial possession any longer. And so the question then arose of how the British would transition their centuries of rule across an entire subcontinent towards independence. There were many different ideas of how exactly to do that at the time, but the British ultimately decided that they would partition their colonial possessions in India between the subcontinent's two largest religious groups, a Hindu-majority state that they called the Dominion of India, and a Muslim-majority state that they called the Dominion of Pakistan. In early 1947, the final British colonial viceroy of India, Lord Mountbatten, irrevocably and hastily set the deadline for India and Pakistan's independence for the 15th of August, within only a matter of months without the final borders being yet decided. In order to figure out what the final borders between India and Pakistan would be, Lord Mountbatten and the local Hindu and Muslim representatives brought in a British lawyer to draw them up, who was named Sir Cyril Radcliffe, whose task became to draw out the lines across the subcontinent that would divide Hindu-majority areas from Muslim-majority areas in as fair of a way as possible. Interestingly, Radcliffe had never even set foot in India before he arrived for this very high-stakes task.
Why would he?
And he also had no
There you go. Everything's gonna be fine.
prior experience with drawing any borders. Because of this, however, he was actually viewed as an asset by everyone involved in the process due to his perceived neutrality and impartiality to the interests of Hindus and Muslims. After he arrived, he was only given 5 weeks to draw out the
Yeah, it's neutral. He doesn't give a fuck about any of them. That's kind of neutral, sure.
borders that would decide the futures of hundreds of millions of people. There was probably no possible way that anyone could have drawn the borders in this scenario under such a tight deadline that would not have led to incredible violence. Radcliffe did his best and drew out his borders generally based on pre-existing internal subdivisions and rivers in the west and in the east, dividing the historically unified regions of Punjab and Bengal between their Hindu and Muslim majority areas. As they were still being drawn, rumors of where the final borders would end up being located led to mounting suspicions and violence between the Hindu, Sikh, and Muslim communities the lines would ultimately divide. And as the violence began escalating into increasingly deadly sectarian riots and pogroms, Lord Mountbatten ordered that the final publication of the Radcliffe borders be delayed by 2 days after India and Pakistan were actually granted their independence, generally viewed as a way for Britain to deflect the blame away for the inevitable violence that they knew was likely to follow. So for 2 astonishing days after the 15th of August in 1947, India and Pakistan were both declared to be independent states without either country actually knowing what their final borders with each other looked like, leading to mass confusion, panic, and violence as Muslims and Hindus fought over what side they would belong to. Finally, 2 days later after the finalized Radcliffe borders were revealed, the building pressure and violence exploded to catastrophic levels as millions of Hindus and Sikhs suddenly found themselves in Pakistan, while millions of Muslims suddenly found themselves in India. Intercommunal and sectarian tensions that had been stoked for years exploded, and an outpouring of pogroms and ethnic cleansings took place involving both sides, while possibly the largest
Yeah, I think, trying to divide based on religion was completely stupid. And people say like, yeah, but, before British came, it worked religion based. Yeah, but before British came. But British has been there for multiple centuries by now. Not to mention Muslims arrived in India, I guess 8 centuries ago, at this point, at 1947, something, right? So, everybody was old enough at that point. So you didn't need to divide in that way. It's not like Muslims just came like 50 years ago and like, okay, now you have to think about if Muslims going to be here, Hindus going to be here. No, they've been here for long enough time by that point. So you didn't need to divide like that. And look at today, like I said, 200 million Muslims live in India. But yeah, that was like a jab, like, before going, like taking a crap in a toilet before leaving type of shit that British did here. They didn't need to do this shit.
Mass migration ever seen in human history began, as millions of Hindus and Sikhs abandoned everything in one direction for India, and millions of Muslims abandoned everything in the other direction for Pakistan. Many of them never ended up making it alive. Within only a year, by 1948, around 1 million people across the subcontinent had been killed by the violent effects of the partition, while around 15 million other people had become displaced and their lives uprooted to the other side of a brand new border. A horrific tragedy that has left deep, long-lasting memories of trauma and mistrust in both the Indian—
1 million people died for fucking what? Humanity's, like ruthlessness is fucking ridiculous, right? And yeah, I don't even know, man. This is just insane. People can just like, don't give a fuck about anything and just like, okay, yeah, just because based on religion, like I'm gonna attack you, like that's just insane.
and Pakistani populations of each other to this day. To give just a brief example of how massively the demographics of the subcontinent were irrevocably changed by the partition, the city of Karachi in modern Pakistan had a pre-partition population that was nearly 48% Hindu and only 42% Muslim, while Delhi in modern India had a pre-partition population that was 40% Muslim. After the partition, virtually all of Karachi's Hindu population had fled or was expelled, while hundreds of thousands of Muslims had been pushed out of Delhi. And the two cities are now overwhelmingly Muslim and Hindu communities, respectively.
Okay, people left India, obviously trying to fled into Bangladesh, Pakistan. Same shit happened in Pakistan. But look at the fucking disparity. Only 1% Hindu left in, Pakistan, while 13% Muslim was still left in India. This is the difference between two countries, right? Even after the partition, when everything shit was said and done, there was still decent amount of Hindus in Pakistan. Nowadays, none of them are left. Look at the percentage of which religion is living there. The laws in Pakistan is tailored around Islam and how Islam things work. That's not the case in India. Like you can't tailor laws around religion. Some of them loose laws exist to respect a religion, but they're not hard laws that you have to enforce, right? So in India, you can't make laws like that, right? They try to respect religion and their rights in certain way, but they have to see, does this ruin a person's liberty and freedom? If that's the case, then that law can't apply. That's how India works. That shit doesn't apply in Pakistan.
Horrified at the levels of violence that exploded in the subcontinent after his lines were revealed, Radcliffe himself burned all of his own papers relating to how he drew them and then left the subcontinent to never return again, just 5 weeks after he had arrived. The final borders he drew left a Pakistan divided between western and eastern halves, separated by more than 1,000 miles across open Indian territory, with the former historically unified regions of Punjab and Bengal divided between India and Pakistan as well based on religious identity. And in addition to the lines that he drew on the map, there were 565 political entities within the subcontinent before the partition that were known as princely states, which were largely autonomous territories ruled by local monarchs who recognized the suzerainty of the British Crown. While varying dramatically in size and population, all 565 of these princely states made up about 40% of the subcontinent's territory and about 23% of its population at the time of the partition.
Yeah, the reason behind British India looked like this is they deliberately ruled like that. So no princely states can like come together and make an empire and like actually threaten British. Divide and conquer was the big mentality of the British Empire when they were working. So obviously the map looked like this. And when they left, princely states were basically given princes were given basically, where do you want to join type of shit. Kashmir obviously opt out for India because Pakistan jumped the gun and attacked Kashmir. And the Kashmir's prince basically panicked. Okay, I'm with India now. Pakistan didn't do that shit. Maybe Kashmir would have belonged to Pakistan by now, right? Officially. But officially, Kashmir belongs to India because of how that thing worked.
And each of their rulers were left with the ultimate decision to join with either India or Pakistan. While the overwhelming majority of these princely states made their decision to join one or the other based on contiguous geography or demographics, 3 of the princely states' rulers chose alternative paths that caused conflicts in Hyderabad, Junagadh, and most controversially of all, in Kashmir.
Junagadh. Gad implying mountain, or wait a minute, mountain, Gad. Yeah, mountain. Junagadh, Juna could be old mountain, I don't know, something like that.
Hyderabad, the largest and wealthiest of the princely states, was governed by a Muslim ruler who presided over a majority Hindu population, and he opted for independence instead of joining with either India or Pakistan. A communist insurgency against this Muslim ruler erupted in Hyderabad that he failed to contain, and then, fearful of a landlocked communist state emerging surrounded by their territory, India decided to invade Hyderabad shortly after in 1948 to crush the rebellion, and then pressured the Muslim ruler to join with India in the process. Junagadh was slightly more controversial. Like Hyderabad, this was another princely state that was governed by a Muslim ruler but which had an overwhelmingly Hindu majority population. But despite the majority Hindu population, and despite not being directly connected to the rest of Pakistan by land, the Muslim ruler of Junagadh decided that the territory would still join with Pakistan, which Pakistan knew would be highly controversial if they accepted. So it took Pakistan an entire month of deliberating to eventually accept Junagadh, which India refused to acknowledge on the basis of Junagadh's overwhelming Hindu majority population, and it being completely surrounded on all of its sides by India.
National security
So
issue
India
at that
blockaded Junagadh. Riots erupted inside and quickly got out of control, and the Muslim ruler fled for his life to Pakistan. Indian forces then advanced into Junagadh and hosted a plebiscite there on which country to join, which more than 99% of the votes cast chose India. And so India annexed Junagadh. Remember all of this for what's about to come next, because the dispute that arose in the other controversial princely state, Kashmir, was sort of the opposite scenario of this, because unlike Hyderabad and Junagadh, Kashmir was governed by a Hindu ruler who presided over a Muslim majority population. The princely state of Kashmir, roughly the same geographic size as the US state of Utah at the northernmost extremity of the subcontinent, had been effectively cobbled together by the British themselves a century before the partition back in 1846. Out of several different historical regions that had been under the control of various rulers of different faiths and backgrounds at different times. Back then, it wasn't the British Crown that put the princely state of Kashmir together, but the British East India Company, a private corporation, which installed a previously lowly chieftain they felt they could control on the Kashmiri throne. What we think of as Kashmir today was, and is, in truth, made up of several different distinct historical regions that Kashmir itself is only a part of. It consisted of the densely populated and heavily Muslim and Kashmiri-speaking Kashmir Valley, which lent the overall princely state its name. The predominantly Hindu and majority Dogri-speaking Jammu that included a large Muslim minority, and the sparsely populated, roughly equally split Buddhist and Muslim and largely Tibetan-speaking Ladakh. The East India Company installed a Hindu dynasty from the Jammu region onto the throne of Kashmir, who always lacked legitimacy within the Kashmir Valley and Ladakh regions that had majority non-Hindu populations. A century later, in 1947, at the time of partition, the still Hindu ruler of Kashmir, the Maharaja Hari Singh, proved indecisive on choosing which path to pursue. He alone possessed the legal right to take all of Kashmir into either India or to Pakistan. But he also initially desired to pursue a third path like the ruler of Hyderabad had attempted, and he wanted to make Kashmir an independent nation. Both India and Pakistan attempted to apply pressure on Kashmir after their independence to sway the Maharaja to their side, while the Muslim majority of Kashmir generally looked towards Pakistan, and the Hindu and Buddhist minorities in Jammu and Ladakh generally looked towards India. All across the princely state of Kashmir at the time in 1947, the total population was 77% Muslim, with a significant 20% Hindu minority.
Yeah, but most of the Muslims were like the eastern part of Kashmir, while obviously Jammu and Ladakh were mostly Buddhists and Hindus who wanted to be in India. But then again, in the end, it was his decision, prince's decision, that was the legal thing. So yeah, obviously he opted for India, shit happened, right? Some of the Kashmir got annexed by Pakistan, some of them stayed with India. Obviously, that's the shit you have today, right? You would argue, like, isn't that the same thing as like how in Gujarat there was like, how Prince said, okay, like I'm gonna stay with Pakistan. Yeah, but India, and it was mostly Hindu population, India did annex it and he did run away. Kashmir, same thing. India did took a lot of it. Pakistan also took a lot of it. There you go. Should we settle there? No. Pakistan still to this say, oh no, I want full Kashmir. Ask people that live there right now. Oh, they're Muslims. So there are 200 million Muslims living in India right now. They're happy they're living in India. So, Kashmir's economy went up. As soon as the special status was removed, Indian military was there. Safety went up as well. None of them want to leave. Economy is booming for them. They have money now, right? But Pakistan, oh no, I want Kashmir because, okay, there are Muslims there. Yeah, there are other Muslims in some other places where you want that shit as well. This shit is ridiculous, right?
As the pressure mounted and the future remained uncertain, a revolt broke out among the Muslim community in Kashmir's western Poonch region, which was quickly supported by thousands of Pakistani tribesmen who were allegedly armed and supported by the Pakistani government, who crossed over the border into Kashmir in either an invasion or an intervention, depending on your perspective. The Hindu Maharaja of Kashmir was not capable of stopping this assault and the rebellion on his own, and so he asked for India's military assistance in repelling them. India then clarified that they would indeed be willing to send their military support to repel the Pakistanis and quash the rebellion, but only on the condition that the Maharaja finally made up his mind and joined Kashmir to India in exchange. Under this enormous pressure, the Hindu ruler of Kashmir agreed with India and signed the document to incorporate his Muslim-majority state into India instead of Pakistan. The Indian army then advanced into Kashmir. The Pakistanis refused to recognize the decision based on Kashmir's Muslim-majority population and refused to back down, and so began the first war between India and Pakistan almost immediately after they both were born together. And so the high mountains of Kashmir became a fiercely contested battlefield. Now, while both India and Pakistan wanted all of Kashmir for ideological and nationalist reasons, they also wanted and continue to want all of Kashmir for geostrategic reasons as well. For decades ever since, the Pakistani government and military have frequently referred to Kashmir as their jugular vein, because it is seen as such a vital area for their national security. For one thing, Pakistan knows that as the smaller country, it'll always be demographically, economically, and militarily weaker than India is. Pakistan is also a country that lacks strategic depth relating.
Okay, this wasn't the disparity during the partition. The disparity is much bigger now. India has much higher population than it had back then, right? Pakistan obviously had little compared to India, but the disparity wasn't this big. Obviously, that goes with like economic boom, right? When your country's economy go up, birth rates go higher, yeah, you're gonna have a big population.
To India. Pakistan's second largest city, Lahore, is located directly adjacent to the Indian border, while the Pakistani capital city, Islamabad, is located only about 45 kilometers away from the disputed Kashmir territory. If India were to hypothetically initiate an all-out conventional invasion of Pakistan, they could use Kashmir as a position to attack the capital city with artillery and missiles, while the main Indian army drives across the relatively flatter land from the south, where Pakistan...
Yeah, they did that shit in one of the war. Went all the way to Islamabad before saying, okay, fine, you can have it all back, and there you go, that ends the war.
Control all of Kashmir instead, they would eliminate India's ability to quickly outflank the capital during a conflict, and they would improve their strategic depth relative to India significantly. Moreover, without Kashmir, Pakistan would have no direct access to what has become their greatest geopolitical ally, China. China maintains a significant number of separate territorial disputes with India as well, and so on the principle of the...
Okay, they didn't have China before, it's a very recent thing, so China, that doesn't matter much, right? It's a recent thing, but I think it's the water. That access to water depends on Kashmir a lot, so they're like, oh, we want Kashmir. But then again, yeah, they're never gonna get Kashmir, so there's no point of all this back and forth shit, right? Yeah, if you look at the history, all the shit that happened, right? If they didn't jump the gun, maybe Prince of Kashmir would not have sided with India, right? Maybe he would have listened to his majority Muslim population and sided with Pakistan. But no, they jumped the fucking gun, right? And, the prince had to ask India, like, okay, I'm going to side with you if you quash the rebellion and all that shit. So there you go.
Enemy of my enemy is my friend. Pakistan and China have drawn increasingly closer together over the decades due to their shared rivalry and territorial disputes.
No, China has given fund to Pakistan because of not to mention the geographical advantage. They have a port now in Indian Ocean. Without it, they don't have the port. India could literally make things much worse for China if it wanted to, and block the access to Indian Ocean. But now they can't if they have port in Pakistan. Not to mention added advantage, they can pressure Pakistan to keep pressure on India. So there you go. It's one-sided thing. It's not Pakistan and China. It's mostly China.
With India. The relationship between them has gotten even more serious in the 21st century, as Pakistan has become the keystone project in China's overall Belt and Road Initiative. Since 2015, China has invested more than $65 billion into what they call the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a series of thousands of kilometers worth of paved highways and railways that sprawl out from Pakistan's Arabian Sea port of Gwadar across the country into China's western Xinjiang province. This route, built up at tremendous expense and effort over the past decade, enables China to import some oil from the Persian Gulf without that oil having to travel through the strategic Strait of Malacca, which China fears the US Navy could blockade and shut down in the event of a war between them. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor therefore gives China greater strategic flexibility with energy resources by providing them with an alternative, more secure supply route. And it's given Pakistan tens of billions of dollars for development and further solidified their bond with China. And the linchpin of the whole project is, of course, Kashmir, which is the only way that Pakistan and China are able to directly connect with one another, and thus why China is highly incentivized to see Kashmir more in the hands of Pakistan than with India. India, meanwhile, is perennially afraid of being forced into facing its ultimate worst-case scenario, a two-front war against Pakistan and China at the same time, fought over each of their major claims in Kashmir in the west.
Yeah, see, the thing with India is like, yeah, India wants Kashmir back because it belongs to fucking India, right? Like, you can fight over semantics. Oh, just like Junagadh isn't Kashmir. Yeah, okay, India could take Junagadh, they took Junagadh. Kashmir belonged to India, India took Kashmir. Okay, you could argue like Pakistan takes some portion of it. Fair enough. India still claims Kashmir. But India's not looking to fight and take back all the Kashmir right now. India doesn't give a shit. India's economy is booming right now. India doesn't want all that shit. It's Pakistan who's constantly like, we want Kashmir back and doing attacks. Military-wise, they can't do shit, so they have to fund terrorism. India want Kashmir back, but not that bad. Like, okay, fine, whatever border is left, it's fair enough. Half the Kashmir is to Pakistan, half the Kashmir is towards India. India doesn't care that much. India will never officially recognize that half of the Kashmir belongs to Pakistan. It's still India's. But India is not looking to fight or take it back or launching tanks or some shit. It's not like how China is preparing to take back Taiwan. India doesn't care at that level, right? So, right now at this current moment, it's just Pakistan. We want all of the Kashmir back. Well, begging for $1 billion from IMF. Another $2 billion just recently. Just taking money from China and IMF. Don't even have money to like maintain shit at your own home. You want Kashmir now. For what? Oh, it's a geographical advantage. How about you fix your home first? Get slightly richer and then think about all that shit, right? It will give you buffer time. How about that?
And China's claim to Arunachal Pradesh in the east. If India were able to establish full control over Kashmir, it would geographically split its two biggest regional rivals apart from one another, and it would eliminate China's biggest reason for being aligned with Pakistan in the first place, while it would also grant India a direct land border with Afghanistan and a window of influence into Central Asia. But perhaps the biggest strategic value to Kashmir from both India and Pakistan's perspectives is the hold that the territory has over both of their water supplies. The Indus River and its tributaries begin high up in the mountains of Chinese-controlled Tibet, but the Indus itself and many of its tributaries all flow through the territory of Kashmir first, before they later enter into Pakistan and flow down to the river's mouth on the Arabian Sea. The Indus River is Pakistan. It provides almost 3/4 of Pakistan's entire water supply for the country's 250+ million people today, and it's the leading source for the country's irrigation and agricultural industry, which accounts for 23% of the country's total GDP. 90% of Pakistan's entire population lives within the Indus River's basin, while dams along the river generate 1/5 of Pakistan's total electricity supply. This is the main reason why the Pakistani military refers to Kashmir as their jugular vein. If Pakistan were to control all of Kashmir, they would be able to fully secure all of their water supply. But if India were to control all of it, Pakistan would always fear that India would be able to restrict or even shut down their water supply along the Indus and throw the entire country's future into jeopardy. These strategic stakes and interests on top of their national...
India technically already controlled it, right? whatever portion of Kashmir that Pakistan have, like that's not where the river starts. The river already starts from the Indian side already. They can just make dams if they fucking wanted to.
Claims based on the territory's Muslim majority for Pakistan and the former Hindu ruler's decision for India have always meant that Kashmir would be seen as a core national interest to both Pakistan and India alike, and what has contributed to the bitterness of their fight over it for nearly 80 years now. For just over a year after October of 1947, the Indian and Pakistani armies battled each other within Kashmir for control of the territory, and the front lines gradually solidified around what initially became known only as the ceasefire line, after both sides agreed to a ceasefire in January of 1949. Thousands of soldiers on both sides were killed, and by the end of it, India controlled roughly 63% of the territory of the former princely state, including the heavily populated Kashmir Valley, the more sparsely populated Ladakh, and most of Jammu, while Pakistan had gained control over a part of Jammu in the west, and the more remote, sparsely populated territories of Gilgit and Baltistan in the north, with both sides left continuing to claim all of the others' holdings within the former princely state as well. The front line between their armies in Kashmir was never recognized by either side as a final border, and only as a temporary ceasefire line as per the terms of the Karachi Agreement they signed later over the summer of 1949.
LOC, line of control, that's what they call it, because right now, with force, that is the only they can have control over. Yeah, an aggressive guy can come to power in India, say, fuck it, okay, war 2.0, let's take Kashmir back, and that shit could work. Millions of people would die, it would be devastation. But India could technically take Kashmir back, even if China joins in. But yeah, that shit would be next level. So at least it's good that someone like that is not in power, because I don't like that shit. I don't care how much advantage India would get from taking all that back. It's not good enough for all the things would happen, all the deaths that would happen, right? People have this warped concept in their head. Whenever I say shit about this in the comment, like, okay, oh, like without even watching my video, just assume shit. I don't want war. I think anybody who's been watching my video already knows my position. Like, in the end of the day, borders and all this, like, human fucking concept. Humans are humans. I don't want fucking war and people dying, right? That doesn't mean India is a bitch and is going to take shit like terrorism, right? But yeah, in the end, war is not a good thing. And India's, thriving right now. Economy is thriving. India doesn't need Kashmir that much, right? So India's happy with where it is. Like, even Pakistan annexed a lot of Kashmir that belong to India. India's fine right now. If you're going to push beyond that, like, come on. You really think India's not going to answer? Come on.
The Karachi Agreement, negotiated by the UN, is what formally established the ceasefire line across Kashmir, while it also, very critically here, reaffirmed the necessity for a plebiscite to be held within Kashmir on what Kashmir's ultimate status would end up being. But to this date, however, the plebiscite recommended by the UN in Kashmir has never actually been held. Ever since, Pakistan has continually accused India of betraying the people of Kashmir by never actually holding the plebiscite, while India has accused Pakistan of making the plebiscite impossible to host by never withdrawing their army from the territory, which India argues as a prerequisite for the plebiscite to actually be held, while Pakistan basically just doesn't trust India if they were to withdraw first. For nearly 80 years now since this all started, little else
Yeah, because of the two sides, if there is a trust issue, it's from India, not Pakistan. Because India is sneaky, not Pakistan. Yeah.
has changed in India and Pakistan's stance on this issue, while the people of Kashmir have remained divided across a line on the map that has sometimes been referred to as the Berlin Wall of Asia. The year after the 1949 ceasefire in 1950, India formally incorporated their controlled territory in Kashmir as the state of Jammu and Kashmir, becoming the only Muslim-majority territorial subdivision within India. Jammu and Kashmir was also initially awarded a special autonomous status within India by Article 370 to the Indian Constitution, which granted Jammu and Kashmir its administrative autonomy, its own separate constitution and flag, and critically, prevented Indian citizens from other states in the country to purchase land or property or to settle in Jammu and Kashmir, keeping the region's complex identity and status separate from the rest of the country. Regardless,
why the fuck would we do that? It belongs to India. Why can't other citizens cross through and fucking not reside there? That's not how countries work. This was shit to begin with. At the time, because of some pressure, maybe India agreed to it. I'm glad it was removed. Not to mention, this gave birth to terrorism to basically take hold in Kashmir and can easily sneak into India. That was one of the big reasons to remove this special status. right? Recent, if I don't know if you read in the news or not, because of the recent attack, a lot of these terrorist houses were demolished inside Kashmir, which India controls. Terrorists kind of took house into Kashmir because of this special status, which even to this day we have to worry about that shit, right? This what is it called? Whatever front or whatever the terrorist organization name is, offshoot of Lashkar-e-Taiba, houses inside Indian control Kashmir, or India's part of Kashmir, not Indian control. It all belongs to fucking India. So there's the reason they removed it, because it was increasing national security issues. And yeah, security is much higher, economy is much higher, and this is not Indian graph. This is by the UN and other Western countries that did the survey, said like, okay, economy is like much higher, 5 to 6 times as higher, and security is 10 times as higher. Ask people that living there, Muslim or not, do they want to go with Pakistan or India? See what they say.
The tensions between India and Pakistan over their competing claims to the rest of Kashmir continued remaining high. And then came the Sino-Indian War of 1962, when Chinese troops decided to enforce their own disputed territorial claims with India by invading their disputed territory with India in Kashmir. The Chinese People's Liberation Army managed to rapidly and decisively defeat the Indians within only a month. China managed to capture virtually all of their own claimed territory in Kashmir that they disputed with India in an area known as Aksai Chin, while India's poor performance and defeat in the war.
Yeah, basically China took advantage of this shit and they took back. And yeah, people say like, yeah, but Aksai Chin belonged to China long ago. Where all of India belonged to, I don't know, Indians long ago. There was no Muslims here before Mughal invasion. How far back do we want to go? Should all the Western leave America and give back to Native Americans? Like, how back are we going? This is why I said like Muslims have been in here for like 8 centuries now. Let's not talk about Hindu Muslim war and all that shit, right? Let's talk about countries, because I don't like that shit. Like how far back we are going. People are here. Let's talk about that right now. 200 million Muslims live in India. They're fine. There is no issue here. Like, okay, are you Muslim? Are you Hindu? That shit doesn't exist. People don't ask all that shit, right? No laws basically, like tailored to one person, right? It's all about individuals. That's how India works. This is Pakistan shit. Their laws basically specifically for one religion. They are saying our country works because of Quran. They are making religion and country same thing, not India. Right? You know what? I have to stop here. This video is insanely long, and it sometimes feels like this topics could have been shortened. I don't know why. It's like 3 points so far. I don't know, pick it up next time if this video gets some views or not. I don't know. But yeah, I'll see you next time.